applause and hoping that there's still someone in the stadium. It might sound like this when I'm coming through. There may just be one hand clapping, but and it'll be my sister, actually, I'm sure of it. But my goal is to get through and just, skate as well as I can.
Great stuff, and I'm sure there'll be more than one person waiting for you.
Are you going to?
I'll be there.
I hope you're waiting for me, and you give me 5 minutes to recover before you ask the questions.
What a terrific guy Peter Taufatafuwa of Tonga seems to be. He was with the BBC's Alex Capstick there. You can follow the Winter Olympics live, BBC Two, Red Button Sport website and the BBC Sport app. Norway, Sweden in the men's ice hockey's on Sports Extra starting 1 minute ago, so you can listen to that now. Roger Federer's off to a winning start at the Rotterdam Open. He'll be the sport's oldest world number one if he reaches the semis. England's Jodie Hewitt-Shadoff 3 shots off the lead at the Women's Australian Open Golf. And Great Britain's women have lost their hockey series against Argentina after a 5-2 defeat.
This is BBC 5 Live on digital, online, smartphone and tablet.
Going to speak to Aaron Milojevic very soon about early onset Parkinson's and his own experiences of it, Rachel. That's coming up.
Yes, indeed.
I'll be with you soon. How are you doing?
Well, we'd know if we could actually hear his microphone. Try again, Aaron.
I'm doing fine, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I hear that. Lots of texts, by the way, coming in about...
When you came in and you said, I was very excited for a moment, Aaron, when you said, my fiance's a big fan of yours. And I thought, oh, and you went from the Wheel of Fortune day.
Yeah, all right, yeah, no, a long time ago.
Yeah,
Hoping you were going to hear out. Yeah.
And here he is.
Rachel wasn't even born.
I know it's a disappointment in the flesh. Lots of text messages coming through this morning in reaction to the woman you were talking to, Nikki, about sentences for people so-called joyriding, which is perhaps a phrase that we should kind of bin these days, particularly where it's involved in serious injury or the death of even people in cars.
She was saying there aren't enough youth clubs. She's saying, well, a lot of people are saying that. Well, boo-hoo-hoo, says this text. No youth clubs, nothing to do. Let's talk about parenting and their role in all of this. Let's stop making excuses. That's from John in Birmingham.
And lots more like it. Here's some weather. Simon King.
Hello, good morning. After the last couple of days where we've had some pretty heavy rain and some snow moving eastward across the UK, some strong winds yesterday as well, today is much, much better. We'll start off across England and Wales, where there's plenty of sunshine this morning. We've still got the odd shower here and there, and for northwest England, there could be the odd snow shower continuing into the afternoon over the Pennines. But for most of England and Wales, it's dry, it's bright, there's lighter winds compared to yesterday, and maximum temperatures going up to about 7 or 8 Celsius in northern areas, about 8 to 10 degrees further south. Now for Scotland and for Northern Ireland, watch out for some ice this morning. Still some showers about, and those again will be of snow over the higher ground of Scotland. They'll continue to pile in through the course of today. Best of any brightness in Scotland will be in eastern and southern areas, and there'll be a few bright spells and some sunshine across Northern Ireland at times today as well. Temperatures about 5 or 6 degrees. Tonight there'll be a bit of a frost around, temperatures close to freezing with clear skies, but Friday's fairly similar to today. There'll be plenty of dry and bright weather, but again the continuation of some wintry showers in the north and west.
This is BBC 5 Live, available on the BBC iPlayer radio app. 5 Live Breakfast with Nikki Campbell and Rachel Burden.
It's the breakfast show with no additives.
Well, no, only added joy, except on this occasion perhaps not, because we're going to tell you about all the hidden dangers lurking inside your breakfast this morning.
Spin that wheel.
Well, bread, cereals, as well as the obvious stuff, pizzas, burgers, chicken nuggets, cakes, all of that could be really, really quite bad for our health. A new study has suggested that ultra-processed foods are linked very strongly to cancer. These, as I say, include some of the foods we mentioned, but also some more sort of simple stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of as being highly processed. Linda Bald is from Cancer Research UK. Hi, Linda.
Good morning.
I know you've been having a good look at this. Let's go through some of the basics. It's a study that was carried out in France of over 100,000 people. What exactly did they look at?
So essentially, these were people on average in midlife. So they followed them up. They looked at their diet. They asked them to complete incredibly detailed diaries for at least 2 days to look at what they ate. And then they followed them up over time to see whether there was an increased risk of cancer. And basically, they found that for every 10% increase in these ultra-processed foods in the diet, that was associated or linked to with an increase of around 12% in overall cancer risk. So lots of limitations to this study, but very interesting.
And presumably they're controlled for all kinds of other factors like lifestyle, exercise and that kind of thing, where people lived.
Well, they tried to. I mean, to be honest, in a perfect world, what you'd want is a trial where you randomise people to eat these foods for a long time and some didn't. But that's not very ethical, is it? So they have to kind of watch what happens. And actually, they tried to control for physical activity and smoking and things. But interestingly, they couldn't control for everything. And I don't think that it adequately looks at weight, being overweight as a risk factor.
Yeah. When they say ultra-processed, how did they define that?
Well, they have 4 categories of food, and that's one of them. And so these are things, as you say, like the bread, sweets, crisps, etc.
Can we just go back to the bread thing? Because most people, I think, would really struggle with regarding that as ultra-processed. How does that classify as ultra-processed?
As they make their toast.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I think they've used what's a well-established categorization of foods. But yeah, basically it's gone through an industrial process. It's had additives added to it. It's also in that plastic packaging. Those are the factors they've looked at. And then they say, for example, that things like homemade bread don't fall into that category. So it's a difficult one, but some of them are pretty obvious.
So it's not necessarily the raw ingredients, it's what happens to them in a mass-produced context.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of things we don't know about these chemicals, about the packaging, about some of the procedures, the reshaping, the pre-processing. It's a tricky issue, so lots of unanswered questions there.
Yeah, one theory is, and certainly I think the lead researcher on this believes this, that it is the additives, it is the chemicals in the processing process, it's a terrible phrase, which is perhaps cancer causing, but other people have said it's actually an absence of vitamins and minerals in a diet that could be what make people more vulnerable to cancer.
Yes, I think more research is needed, but what we do know is that if you don't eat enough fruit and vegetables, you are at risk of some types of cancers. If you're overweight and obese, you're significantly risk. Second leading risk factor, preventable risk factor after smoking. And processed meat, we also know. We know about fiber. So if you take all of those things together, the key take-home message from this is, the occasional sugary snack, nobody should worry about that. But we really need to be trying to...
What is occasional? So this is where we get into trouble. What's occasional, Linda?
Well, really, we shouldn't be eating things which have more than, for example, 15 grams of sugar per 100 grams, more than once or twice, a day. Or we've talked about 100 gram sweet snacks for kids, haven't we? Public Health England talks about those. So one study showed that these ultra-processed foods are actually up to 50% of our diet in the UK now. So I think we have to rebalance that because it could hopefully prevent some of these cancers in the future.
You go into any supermarket, in their food section, I would say 70% of the food is processed. More?
Yeah. And some of the work we've been doing in Scotland actually is trying to look at the, price promotions. So when I wander into my local supermarket in Edinburgh, the multi-buy offers are on things like crisps and sweets and snacks. They're not on, or not as often, on the fruit and veg. So I think there's a lot of things we could do in our shopping environment as well to rebalance some of these things.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, one of the discount supermarkets, I've just noticed an advert in the papers today advertising lots of fruit and veg on discount as well. So some of them do it, but you're right, it'll be an interesting one. So we treat the study with caution, but the central message you're pretty happy with, Linda, that avoid processed food where possible.
Absolutely, and just also to emphasise, only 1 in 4 people in the UK, for example, know that being overweight and obese and these foods contribute to it is a risk factor for cancer.
Well,
so I think it's about
4.
raising awareness.
Only
1 in 4. Yeah.
With all the information that we're bombarded with on a daily basis.
Well, here's the problem. If I can just read this text quickly from Jay Adler. If we took everything that either the studies and the scientists say, we would all starve to death. Some scientists say that eating vegetables are dangerous. Bring on the chips. So that's where people come to when you have study after study after study about the dangers of certain foods, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful and try and communicate clearly, but there are good sources of information. And, if people are concerned about their diet and risk factors for cancer, do have a look at the CREK website. We spend a lot of time trying to say, okay, this is a good study, this is not such a good study, and try and provide some good advice so people can make choices. But it's complicated. We live busy lives and it's difficult to take all of this in, but interesting study today.
We can see the obesity crisis with our own eyes when we walk around the streets then. So that's the biggest study of all, isn't it?
It is, and the worrying thing, Nikki, is we haven't seen any reduction in rates of overweight or obesity in the UK in a decade, and we're one of the heaviest nations in Europe. So that is, smoking used to be the big problem. We've made big progress there, but I think this is one of our new public health potentially a crisis. So this is stuff people can do for themselves, but I think we probably need to think about other policies that can be implemented.
Thank you very much, Linda Bald from Cancer Research UK, 7:45.
Other policies to be implemented. There's a debate, always.
Can I just say very briefly, I'm trying to get my own personal campaign is to stop kids being given sweets on birthdays at the end of school. It drives me slightly nuts. And they're doing a consultation at the moment, and as part of that, they've asked the children. It's just like, what?
She's banging her head on the desk.
But we know what the children are going to say. But then, interestingly, according to my children, they said no, there was quite a range of views. Some of them did feel it was time for sweets to be.
Oh, really? This is like the story about university chancellors setting their own salaries.
Yeah, a little bit.
Newspaper today. Right. It's her personal campaign, the burden law. I can see it now. Right.
All the other parents and children hate me for it.
Let's talk to somebody who is at the peak of physical fitness and